Welcome to the show. I'm Damon Frank, and on today's panel, I'm excited to be joined today with my guest, who combined on this panel have over 100 years of sobriety. I'm pleased to be joined today by Jamie, Rich, and Steve. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Great to see everybody. And today in the Recovered Life panel, we're going to talk about tips on staying sober during the holidays. And there's so much great recovery on this panel here. I'm just going to dive right in to Jamie and ask her for her tips, because this is a tricky time, especially for people who are just in recovery or people that maybe have long-term recovery and are trying to stay sober.
I got sober. Well, my sobriety date is in October, so I was moving into the holidays and just when I was still counting days without a drink. And I found that I had to look after myself in ways when I was with family at the holidays. And I wasn't living anywhere near family, but we got together, and my dad, who was a fantastic bartender, said one of the first things my parents said to me is they decided what we'd all drink, that they'd be Bloody Mary, so it would look like we were all drinking the same thing, but I have a virgin Bloody Mary. And then my dad wanted to use the same glasses to make it look all the same. And I just said, no, I'm going to have this glass. I'm not picking up the wrong glass. So I had to look after myself in that way. And it took a while for my mother to know that I wasn't going to have just a sip. I just say, no, not a sip. But, and her mother died of this disease and a lot of other people in her family. But I had to put my sobriety above everything else at those times.
You know, what you're talking about is a lot of holiday traditions as well. So maybe people do a holiday toast on Christmas, on New Year's, and there's a lot of pressure because it's not that you're saying no necessarily to the drink, you're saying no to the tradition, So how did you deal with that? What were those feelings that you had at that time, and how did you deal with that?
Well, I was happy to have the non-alcoholic Bloody Mary. It looked like the same drink, and it was kind of festive, and I was having my mocktail when everyone else was having a drink. So I wasn't, and I love the holidays, so I'm really up for tradition. But even now, and I'm thinking I'll have to get something soon. It's nice to have a little bubbly cider or something. Or here I have to watch out. I live in Ireland, and so when you go for a cider, it's not non-alcoholic. So, but get something, some kind of fruit juice with bubbles in it to be a little festive, and that helps.
Stephen, what's your thoughts on this?
I just try to keep it. Some of the same principles I use every day. I try to keep it simple, and maybe even more simple during the holidays. After being sober a little while, I think one of the gifts is that I've learned that I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. I don't have to do anything that doesn't make me feel good. So I hear a lot about people, being wary of going home for the holidays or spending times with family. And I'm blessed with, my father's in recovery. So that part of the family is simple. But I don't, if I just avoid situations where I'm not going to do well. I'm not the most, alcohol was a social lubricant for me. That if I was in a work party situation, that would be a dangerous situation for me. And these days I might avoid those type of situations. With COVID at hand, I think that my particular issues are sort of buffered by, I can't do a lot of the things that would be risky behavior for me. The chances of me, although I was a very isolated drunk, the chances of me sitting at home at Christmas being tempted by a bottle are very remote at this point. First, I don't keep alcohol on hand. And also, it's just not part of that, wouldn't feel festive to me. but a workplace or a friend's situation, and I just try to keep sober people close right now. I have sober people in my life, and I try to keep that connection in the holidays in equal measure to the people who maybe don't. They may or may not have a drinking problem, but I find that it's really only truly sober people that are working some format of a program that understand who I am and what I need. And if just to kind of bring it full circle, if I didn't feel like going home or being around family was something I would be safe in my sobriety, I simply would not do it. And I think that if there was anything I could tell a newcomer to sobriety, was that this is your sobriety and you have to own it. And that's how you're going to stay safe. And if you miss going home for 1 year or 2 years because that jeopardizes your sobriety, well, maybe the third or fourth year will be a better, you'll be alive for the third or fourth year.
That's great. That's great advice. And what I'm hearing from you is, how to know your limits, right? To really kind of, and that's hard, I think, especially in early recovery, is to actually know when you're first sober, what are those limits? But, if you listen to your gut, you kind of know I'm over my head here, Rich, how do you pick, what is appropriate for you to do and what's not, and when you feel uncomfortable? How did you do that in early sobriety?
Well, I have a firm understanding that, to me, I'm very mentally visual with pictures and icons and things. And for example, if this was a drink, a beer, a pint of vodka or a mixed cocktail, this is basically, in my mind, it's a stick of dynamite. Okay. So I just have this, I fell into this visualization of this drink is a stick of dynamite. If I consume this first drink of dynamite, it's going to explode into something that's going to make one heck of a mess. And the other thing so that's my base default, is that very first one, whatever the circumstances, with family, with friends, at a work party, at a restaurant, it doesn't matter. This is like XXX with the skull and crossbones on it. And it's deathly dangerous to me because I'm an abnormal drinker. And I have a clear understanding today, which is very helpful, to understand the difference between a normal drinker at, say, a restaurant or an employee gathering, holiday party, versus an abnormal drinker. The normal drinkers are able to, mingle and be festive and merry and take a couple sips and set it down, and they could forget about it and leave it there on the table. People like myself are looking at what they left, wondering if they're coming back to get it, and I would be the guy to pick it up. I'd be that crazy monster that started the dynamite, and it just goes into the monstrous thing that doesn't stop, and I can't control it. So,
Rich, I know you have a really good support system. So you've been very successful about building, people around you that know your story and are really, applauding and for your sobriety. Do you guys find the rest of you, is that helpful to have people in your circle? So you might have to go to a work party and maybe one person knows that you're sober, right? How do you guys do that? What are the strategies that you use when you have to go to a situation that might be, maybe you feel a little over your head? What strategies do you use?
I would say, Damon, that the most dangerous place for me to be is in a situation where there is alcohol involved, where no one knows I'm an addict.
Mhm.
So, that's where my disease will, oh, just this one time I'll get over. Like I'm a scammer. Like I'll scam myself, and it's like very helpful for me to be both connected to sober people, but also be honest about who I am and what I am to some close, people around me, that people know what my deal is. It's when I'm posturing or trying to pretend I'm something that I'm not, that I'll get into trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I got sober, I had not many friends left. Because of my behavior as an alcoholic, and also because they were dying or far away. So I didn't have that. So most of my friends for many years now are sober people. And when I was working, after I was in my second year of sobriety, I quit. I became a school teacher, so I didn't have to worry about being wined and dined or going to a holiday party with an open bar. That just didn't happen. They'd give us a slice of cake in the cafeteria, or they'd go out for lunch. And there it was easy. Because I've been sober for long enough to know that no, I'll just have a lemonade or something. But so that wasn't a problem.
When this is something that I always kind of, it's a minefield, the holidays, because you have candy that's drenched in alcohol, cakes, pies, food sometimes is made with alcohol, right? So there's all these, kind of what Rich is saying, little dynamite everywhere. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to navigate through. One of the things that I did in early sobriety, and I still do this in business situations sometimes. When I'm in a business situation, sometimes, somebody will just put a glass of wine right in front of you, and, they don't know, they're not thinking about it. It's innocent enough. They're not trying to hurt you, but they'll literally do that, or they'll give you a gift and they'll say, hey, you should try this right now. This is really good. Right. And it's alcohol based. That whole self-obsession where we're always thinking about that other people, are they normal drinkers? Are they not normal drinkers? All that stuff in early sobriety. How do you deal with that? How do you deal? Because really the reality is those people are not thinking about whether we're drinking or not, right? Wouldn't you say that, Rich? Those people are not, obsessed with whether we're going to take that drink or not.
Absolutely. Normal drinkers don't obsess and think about drinking. It's a very natural part of a consumption of a product, just like a donut or food. And my wife, for example, is a great teacher to me visually. I observe her as a normal drinker, and I see how a normal drinker behaves. And I will just say one example would be, she's feeling festive this holiday season, so she goes to Trader Joe's and comes home with a 12-pack of Blue Moon beer or something like that, right? And she cracks it open. She has one, maybe two, and then the box just ends up sitting there for weeks. And that is a normal drinker to me. In fact, imagine if that was myself, that box would have been mauled and emptied in a matter of hours. So they're normal drinkers, and it's very key to understand and be clear in your mind and your heart and your soul what the difference is between a normal drinker and an abnormal drinker. And we don't think about it or they don't think about it. We do, because it's life or death to some of us. It's danger to some of us of triggering a monstrous obsession that we can't stop. They can drink and hashtag walk away at any given moment and not think about it. So
yeah. There's a half glass of beer on my kitchen table right now because my husband is a normal drinker. He can walk away from a drink, and he has half a beer. But what's also good is that, we met and I got, in sobriety. So he had been affected by others drinking and went through a 12-step program for those people. So he understands what my concerns are about alcohol, that I can't go anywhere near it. And if he suspects that there's some food, if we're at a restaurant, if there's tiramisu he always he'll ask if there's alcohol in anything, which is really nice. I mean, I have to do that too. I can't rely on having somebody do that for me, but it's good that he does that.
Damon, I forgot to mention, I mentioned my wife and being a normal drinker. The fact that she feels comfortable today bringing home a 6-pack of beer. In the beginning, she would not have anything, and she could go the distance without ever drinking again. And that's like, she would do that to support me, right? But I think she's in a place now where she feels very confident and very comfortable that I can cohabitate in an environment, with alcohol in the house and not be in fear or worry. And that's a deep honor to me. And, I wanted to make that point that my supportive partner in life would be willing to never have any evidence of any alcohol in the entire property, if that's what it took to support me, but at this point, it's not necessary. So I just wanted to say that's a testament to what I've learned with folks like yourself, going down this path, is that we can survive and we can cohabitate in these environments where there's just alcohol and booze everywhere, and we don't have to fall prey to it anymore. And
I think you have to know your limits too, right, Stephen? Like, I know you're in social situations a lot where you might not know people. Maybe there's feelings, right? That maybe it's a business situation or it's a personal situation where you're meeting people for the first time and you're a little nervous about it. Like, I know Rich talked about alcohol in the house, and, I'm surrounded by boring drinkers. I'm surrounded by people who are not alcoholics. And, for me, it's very hard to, like, people ask me what it's like to, what is it like to be a normal drinker? And I'm like, I have no idea, right? I have no idea what it's like to be a normal drinker. So I only know what it's like to be an abnormal drinker. So when you're around people, you have to know your limits too. There has been times in my life where I've had no alcohol in my house at all because I've requested that. And I always find that those little situations, when I hear about people who have gotten in big trouble during the holidays, it's little situations like they weren't feeling comfortable and that half a bottle, that half of glass of beer was on, but they didn't want to tell anyone and they didn't want to reach out for help to their support group. And then the next thing they know, they're drinking that, they're drinking. What's your thoughts on that, Stephen? How do you set it up? Do you have to kind of sometimes set up scenarios and be really good about your communication during the holidays?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, when I was at the height of my drinking, a party or being at a restaurant was hell to me. Yeah. Drinking at a restaurant where I had to wait for a waiter to refresh my drink, that wasn't going to happen. I had two places I would drink. I would drink at a bar where I was belly up at the bar and had a personal relationship with the bartender, and that drink was never empty, or I would drink at home by myself. And if I extrapolate that, like, I can still be in touch with that piece where I'm like, I can be at a party and be like, the going to the bar for the standing in line for a drink just does not appeal to me at all. On any level, even I am basically now surrounded in life with sober people. I don't, except in the workplace, and they all know, and I have enough sober people in my life that that's really helpful. And then in terms of boundaries in early sobriety, I was probably embarrassed to say, no, don't fill up my wine glass, or don't, or just sort of not be walking around with a colored drink in my hand, or a cocktail. But I quickly sort of got to a place where it's like, I don't really give a, it just, it's like Rich says, it's like those people, they're not paying attention to that. They just aren't. And if there is someone who does pay attention to that and point out to me that I don't have a drink in my hand, I can pretty much count on the fact that they probably got a problem.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
if they need me to have a drink so that they're comfortable, I mean, that's an Al-Anon issue, but I don't go for it. Like one of the blessings of having a little bit of time in sobriety is being able to navigate the world without this haunting feeling of, alcohol or a hangover. And but I do make decisions about where I'm going to go and when, and not just there. I don't have a list of places I will never go. I sort of base it on how I feel at any given time. If I feel strong and I've got good sober support, great. If I don't, I might take a pass.
Jamie, I wanted to ask you this question. And Stephen just talked about feelings in early sobriety. And I want to kind of leave people in this video too that may be watching this, that maybe they're in their first week and it's the holidays, the first couple of days, and they're thinking, and they just went to an event and they're like, that was absolute hell and torture. I want people to know that if you keep with the program and you keep going in your recovery, that's not always going to be like that, right? Your feelings about going out and entertaining and seeing people will change, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. I mean, there were times when I thought I would go to a party, and then the last time I realized, no, there's going to be too much drinking. Other substances are going to be involved. And I just said no. And then I also learned some tips. Like one time I had to go to a wedding. It was a coworker. We were really, and someone gave me this tip, because I was all worried about when they would come around for the toast, for the champagne. And someone said, turn your glass upside down. Brilliant. There's all these simple things we can do. And, I knew someone who helped me early on sobriety, and at work situations, she would tell people, oh, I'm allergic to alcohol. I mean, you tell somebody you're allergic to shrimp or peanuts, you can tell them you're allergic to anything and they'll probably leave you alone unless they really have a problem with it. I also found, because I mentioned I enjoy the holidays, is I would invite people to my home. I would make a plan, because then I wouldn't have to worry about dread being alone and worried about whether I'd want to have a drink or not. But I would surround myself with people who were sober, and that's a huge way of getting through.
Rich, how has your feelings changed from early sobriety to now years of sobriety regarding the holidays and the feeling of uncomfortableness?
Yeah, what I've learned is those first couple of years, I still had I'm a person that really enjoys traditions in our holidays, and the holiday time is like the longest extension. Like July 4th, that's a one weekend or one and done kind of event. St. Patrick's Day, same thing, a one and done. But the holidays kind of starts right before, leading up to Thanksgiving, and then the stores are all decked out like weeks before, and so you're already in the mindset of holidays, and it's like a month-long stretch of just saturation of festivity and all this stuff on overdrive, and it's everywhere. It's on TV commercials, it's on the internet, it's in your email inbox, it's everywhere. And those were the most difficult in the first couple of years, because I still learned that I had this massive emotional attachment to the holidays, particularly what it means, the gift giving and the racking up a bunch of money to get a bunch of gifts for a bunch of people, and planning it all out. And, it's an intense time of mental stuff, and you get consumed by it. And what I just have come to realize over the years is, but back to my reference of, in my mind, I have visuals, going through the holiday stretch in particular. I just now envision the big DVR in the sky that's recording my life. You can call it your higher power or whatever, or just the imaginary DVR in the sky recording my life. And whenever I get into a situation and the hamster wheel starts spinning, just fast forward it. I fast forward the DVR to see what it looks like at the end. And that usually calms me immediately, because me being wheeled out of a casino on a stretcher, or, my suitcases being on the front yard, or the wife and kids packed up and flying away and leaving me because they can't take living with the monster, I just fast forward the tape now. What would this look like if I did this? What my alcoholic is thinking. And usually it's a total train wreck at the end. And so that's my best tip that I can give anyone that helps me tremendously, is the moment I have a thought creep into my mind, looking at a tower of booze in a store, especially out here in Las Vegas. I was at a casino last night. In the first 5 feet, you walk in and you see a bar here, a bar there. It's the devil's den, right? And I just fast forward the tape and just say, they're carrying me out on a stretcher in about 2 hours. And my family leaves me. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is also remember, there's always the day after. So imagine the mess of going through that night, doing what you're thinking, consuming as many drinks as possible, because that's what we do. We go to oblivion, right? We don't just have a couple sips and then we're done. Imagine the morning after taking a trip to oblivion, and that feeling like Stephen was referring to is waking up with that hangover of death, families in shambles, everything's ruined, and it was all for something that happened last night that's no longer there. It's done.
Yeah. That's a really good visualization tip. And, I wanted to end this real quick with everybody telling a quick little story about maybe a nightmare situation that was maybe a close call in early sobriety that you navigated out of, and how you navigated out of it successfully, using the things that you've learned in recovery. Jamie, could you share anything with us, or a last tip?
I've picked up the wrong glass. Thought it was my cup of coffee, and it had sambuca, had something in it, and I just ran to the closest sink and spat it out, and that was it. So and I think I did that one other time where I realized I had to mark my glass because there weren't a lot. It was at a family wedding, and that's been it. That's been it for me.
Stephen, what about you?
Most of the nightmares have to do with when I was drinking, but I will say that the times when I've been in situations and I'm in social situations and I most wanted to drink, the flip side of what Rich and I are describing about the hellish hangover is that the next morning, if you wake up sober, the feeling of, like for me, alcohol is, I am powerless. It is disempowering. But to wake up the next morning and be sober is truly an empowering, feeling. And I've had plenty of regrets for drinking and woke up the next morning and lived in those regrets. I've never woken up the next morning and regretted not drinking ever.
Mm-hmm. That is really great. That's really great. It's just, you have to think about that next day. And I could tell you, if you compile a lot of those next days, the urge to be able to drink or get into that bad situation it really does evaporate.
It does.
It does. Rich, can you leave us with a situation that you were in and how you successfully got out of it?
Yes. In my early sobriety, particularly the first year, I quickly learned how driven by emotions I was. And I didn't understand this part of who I was and what made me tick and what made me do the things that I do. And I will leave you with the picture of a swinging pendulum of emotions. On one end is anger, pure anger. And on the other end is the scene from the Titanic at the front of the boat. I'm on top of the world, right? And so whenever I was quickly swinging to one side or either or of the pendulum of the emotional spectrum, in that place of extreme anger, society, life, room, they're trying to get me and to keep me down. The man's after me, someone wronged me, whatever the reason that triggers intense anger. I had to pick up the phone and call. And in this case, it was my Yoda. I call him my Jedi Yoda and say, the gates are being overrun by my feelings here, and I can't go to the liquor store to solve it. I know that won't happen. And then the same is true for when you are feeling so on top of the world and jovial, and you are in control of everything in your life, and everything's going smooth and silky, and the money's in the bank, or you got a big break, whatever. That's the place where Fantasyland kicks in, right? And then we just lose all track of what we've been working towards, our goals, and we start operating in Fantasyland. And that is a disaster in itself. So I don't want to go to Fantasy Island. I don't want to go there. And I don't want to go to a grumpy troll under a bridge yelling at everybody walking by. So the key is to try to find your place in the middle and keep that pendulum from swinging less. And over time, that's what happens. Our emotional pendulums go like a wide arcing spread to a little swing.
I like what you said, and we're going to leave everybody with this, is that if you are feeling overwhelmed, reaching out, I think everybody would agree, reaching out to somebody else in recovery is going to be probably the quickest solution to your problem.
Instant solution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody. This has been an amazing Recovered Life panel. And thank you so much for your wisdom. And I want to wish everybody a happy holidays.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Damon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jamie.
Stay safe.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.